Hey, what's going on? Today I want to talk about at will employment. Now, this is a concept that I see people get wrong all the time, whether it's employees or managers. I even see it pop up on podcasts where people will claim that at will employment means your employer can just fire you for any reason. It's not a difficult concept, but it is one people mix up all the time. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is confusing at will employment with right to work. They are very different things. Broadly speaking, right to work has to do with your ability to unionize. Now, I might do a video on that in the future, but just so you know, it is not the same as at will employment. So when somebody says, oh, it's a right to work state, and so that means your employer can fire you, has nothing to do with it. The fact is, every state, with the exception of Montana, has a traditional at will law. All that means is both you and the employer have the right to terminate your employment at any time for any reason. So you're not under any sort of contract. That's why you don't have to give a 2 week notice. Although I definitely recommend you give a 2 week notice, and I'll do another video about that. I have my reasons. But you don't have to. You're not under a contract. The employer can't do anything other than make it so that you're not eligible for rehire. Now, that does technically mean that the employer can fire you without giving you a reason. But it's not quite as simple as that. There are other laws that do protect you as an employee. For example, Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act gives you the right to engage in protected concerted activity, which means you can talk about your wages, hours, and working conditions. If you happen to be talking about that or complaining about that and you're fired, that's a violation of the law. Another example is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protects you from discrimination based on race, color, national origin, or sex. The Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act that came out in 2008 broadened your protections from being discriminated against due to a disability. Now, this doesn't necessarily even mean a chronic disability. A lot of people will think about this as having a mental illness or having something that is ongoing, but you can have a disability that is not chronic and still be covered under the ADAA. So employees do have a lot of laws protecting them. This idea that your employer can just fire you for any reason is just not true. Now, does that mean that your employer won't try to fire you? Of course not. I've worked with many managers who will cite at will employment as their reason for their ability to fire somebody. And it's just ridiculous. The fact is, it's not a proper defense when you go to court. I've read decisions by the EEOC and various judicial bodies. And anytime I see at will employment pop up as a reason the employer gives, it's typically shot down. There has to be some other reason. Where employers a lot of times get themselves into trouble is you as an employee come to them and complain about your working conditions, for example. They don't like it and they decide, you know what, you're just not a good culture fit, and they fire you. Well, that's protected concerted activity. You could take them to court over that. Unfortunately, a lot of employees just won't do that. And so we get this idea that at will employment just means your employer has the ability to do whatever they want. You have a lot more rights. Now, I don't support frivolous lawsuits. If someone did something that warrants termination, the employer should terminate them. But as both an employer and an employee, you need to know what at will really means. At the end of the day, it just means you don't have a contract with the employer. The employer doesn't have a contract with you. You can quit whenever you want, and yes, the employer can fire you if they choose to do so. However, employers need to be careful that they don't terminate an employee in a way that makes it look like they're discriminating against them. And employees, if you feel like you're being discriminated against, you should seek legal help. There's lots of agencies that will hear you. There's lots of lawyers who work on this. If you're receiving unjust discipline within an organization, you can talk to HR. Now, I know lots of people have their problems with HR, and I'm going to do another video about that as an HR professional. I don't agree with the criticism that HR gets, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that you have the ability to do something. Again, managers, you need to understand this. You cannot just fire an employee because they're at will. I think you would find it difficult to find a lawyer that would back that up. I'm not saying they're not out there. There's crazy people everywhere. But most reasonable lawyers are going to tell you that's not going to be a good excuse. So anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about at will employment because it's a concept that is just very misunderstood. And the way that it's talked about makes it seem like employees have no power in the workplace. And that's just simply not true. I mean, just the National Labor Relations Act alone gives employees the right to collective bargaining, right? That's a huge right that you have in this country. Now, we can debate whether or not employers do illegal tactics to prevent people from bargaining. That's not what this video is about. But when we talk about at-will employment, as in the employer can just do whatever they want, I think it does a disservice to employees. So I hope you found this video helpful. Didn't want to take a lot of time. If you liked the video, please subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. Love to know your opinions on this. If you have any experience with at will, or if you have any questions, any topics you'd like to see covered. I'll see you in the next video.